Hello everyone, welcome back to the Story Rift. In today's video, we'll be talking about endings. So before we start the video, just a reminder, there might be spoilers in this, obviously, since we're discussing endings, but I'll try to put it in the description of the video, just so keep an eye out for that. Also, one more thing before we get into it, I just want to say that this channel, while I was going to focus mainly on like literary and like books and stuff like that, I think I'm going to branch out more into like movies and games and stuff like that. I don't know, it just makes it a little more interesting. And I don't know, I just like discussing a variety of different things, at least if it's contained to like science fiction or fantasy. But I might, branch out a little bit in terms of genre. But so just keep an eye out for that. But I don't know, I just think it'll keep it more interesting. Endings to me are one of the most difficult things in storytelling, to be honest. And that's across all mediums. It's just one of those things that is really hard to nail down. To me, even a great story falls flat if it can't stick that landing. You can have this amazing novel or series or movie, but if you don't stick that landing, sometimes it's like all that stuff that came before doesn't really matter and it doesn't hit as hard as it should. I also think it's just finding an ending that feels natural and not forced is also a very difficult thing, and it takes a really talented writer to get that across. I find that the more the writer knows, the themes of whatever he's trying to make, or he or she is trying to make, the more the ending really fits into place. I don't know. I think why they're so hard is that you have to wrap up everything, not just the characters, but the story and just the plot and everything. I guess story and plot are the same thing, but you know what I'm saying. I don't know. It's just, I don't know why. It's just having that end point is so pivotal, and it almost feels, I don't know, annoying, honestly, as a writer myself, because it's like, you can make the best story ever, but if that ending doesn't stick, it just kind of makes the whole thing fall flat. I think one of the reasons why we get bad endings is because people just kind of rush, either they rush the ending or they try to subvert expectations too much. I'm thinking like a Last Jedi, just, I don't know, like trying to subvert expectations or have this twist ending, not because it makes sense, but because you just want to have a twist. I think that really breaks a lot of endings. I don't know, because you don't want the ending to be completely like, foreseeable, right? You want to have a little bit of mystery surrounding it. But at the same time, it's if you have it where it's just like it feels like a random ending where there was no clues set up or anything, it feels very cheap. And I think sometimes it depends on the story. Sometimes you want a story to have a more shocking ending, depending on what genre you're doing. But sometimes, just a good ending that's a little more subtle and not as, I don't know, just like subverting your expectations sometimes can be the best endings. So that begs the question, what makes a bad ending? Well, I feel like most endings are lumped into the sort of decent category. I feel like there are very prime examples of like really bad endings, and also on the opposite end of the spectrum, really good endings. But most of it is just mediocre endings. If you collected all the stories in the world, most of the endings are just kind of you know. I really do think one of the ways that we get bad endings is the writer is just rushing it. Sometimes it feels like, you know, you're really rushing to the finish line, but sometimes it's just you need to take a step back and estimate like what exactly do you want the ending of the story to be. And sometimes I think people just kind of they rush into it, or they just kind of give up on it, or not try to work through it enough, and they just like, oh well, this is fine enough, I guess. Now this I can kind of understand, because like with my own writing, I've really noticed that it's the endings that I'm most excited to write, but at the same time it's like, if you get so excited that you kind of rush through it, or you don't develop it enough, sometimes it can come off as very amateur and just very not well thought out, and like rushed. I think writers can also just get so stuck up on finishing the story. They're thinking about all the plot elements, all those things, and all these characters and stuff, and sometimes they kind of back themselves into a corner, especially if they're not as good as planning as other writers. I can also understand all that stuff, because it's like, it is sometimes you have this story all planned out, and then when you actually get down, sit down and start writing it, it just kind of falls apart, or you need to rework it a little bit. I don't know. I think this can cause some writers to maybe think that, oh, they can't change their ending because it was like so set in stone, and they're so adamant that this is the way that this story should end. But sometimes it's good to just take a step back, I think. And as for the last big reason why I think endings end up bad or terrible, however you want to put it, I think is just ego. Now, this is where I get kind of frustrated, because this is less of a, oh, writing can be difficult thing and more of a I'm just kind of an asshole sort of thing. I know better than everybody else. And some writers definitely surround themselves with, yes men and just think that everything they write is perfect. I think like people like Taika Waititi and Ryan Johnson and definitely J.J. Abrams, they kind of fall into this category where I think it's like, or I would even put M. Night Shyamalan a little bit in here too, where like their endings is just some of them suck because it's like, I don't know, they think everything they write is perfect, even when it's not. But with that out of the way, what makes a good ending? Now, a good ending or even a perfect ending is very much almost impossible, but it is, you can do it. It just takes a lot of planning and thinking and kind of taking your ego out of the equation. I think one of the ways that endings end up being good is because the writer knows exactly what they want the story to end on, and they put in little pieces throughout the story where the ending makes sense and it wraps up everything nicely, and there's no like loose ends. This makes for an ending that isn't as shocking, but it's so just well written and well paced that you can't help but just admire it. I think another way to have a good ending is just by having an emotional character moment. Sometimes you don't need these kind of big events to make a good ending. Sometimes just having, I don't know, just a character who's gone through something, just staring out at something or the horizon or something, can sometimes be just like the best ending and better than just some surprise twist ending. I think a good, well orchestrated ending can also kind of be like the last puzzle piece. It feel like it really falls into place really well. And that's really difficult to do, but I think it can be done. Now, I think if you're going to go the emotional character route, you really have to have a writer who knows their characters really well and also really knows their motivations. And this goes into the more writers who know how to plan out their endings can really help. Even though if you need to, sometimes the endings just don't work and you need to pivot, but a great writer can recognize that and change it. Now, the last big way to make a great ending, I think, is having something that's really shocking, something that nobody really saw coming. But I think those endings, when you actually rewatch or like reread it, you kind of notice like, oh, they did actually put some little, hints and stuff like that in there. I don't know. You can kind of tell if there was a surprise ending that was planned or if it wasn't, and I think that really shines through, and you know, either in a good way or a bad way. I really do think these endings can kind of backfire, though. Like I said, if you don't have, a good enough planning, or your ego is just too big, I think it can kind of muddy the waters, and the shocking ending kind of turn out really sour. So now I'm just gonna go into some of my favorite endings, or my I don't know, the best endings, I guess. Number one for me is the anime Monster. I don't know if I don't know. I don't know if it's kind of a niche anime, but I really enjoy it. I won't go into too much spoilers for this one because it's just one of like the best series ever made. But I don't know, just it's a more, I don't know how to put it, like open-ended ending. But I feel like where this kind of the show's ending really shines is all the characters really end in a great place. They really evolve over time, and every character feels like, even the small side characters feel like they've developed over time, and you feel like their endings really match their character growth. Another ending I really liked this time in books was Assassin's Fate, for Robin Hobb. If you guys don't know, it's like the last book and with Fitz in it. I won't. This is another ending where I really don't want to spoil the ending, so I just won't. But if you have read that ending, you know how hard that hit, man. Like Fitz's, his his destination, if you will, his ending was very fitting but very sad at the same time. And man, Robin Hobb is just so good at writing her characters, and this is one of those instances where it's like just the fact that she knows her character so well, and there's not even a big revelation at the end, I don't think, from what I can remember. It's literally just a very emotional moment between characters, and that's really where the ending shines. Now into something that I don't feel bad spoiling: Return of the Jedi. I could have said a number of different Star Wars movies, but I think this one's probably my favorite. I don't know. I don't think I even need to say anything about this. Just the redemption of Darth Vader in this movie was so well done. One of the best endings ever. I don't know if we'll ever get a cinematic ending as good as this. Now, for my next favorite ending, probably gonna have to do The Witcher 3. Again, I won't spoil anything for it. I know I said there was gonna be spoilers at the end of this video, but the more I think about it, the more I these endings are just so good. I don't want to spoil them. But anyways, yeah, The Witcher 3. I like all the endings. Even the bad one I think is pretty good. Not if you spend all those hours playing it, but I don't know. And this is another like emotional character moment ending sort of thing too. Even though there is a climactic, you know, battle sequence at the end. And I also like to put the ending of the Witcher books as well. I really enjoyed the ending. Just having Geralt, spoiler, die in that way at the end of the book. I don't know. It was a very fitting end to his character and very Witcher, if that makes sense. I think I've discussed this before on the channel in a previous video, but yeah, no, the Witcher books definitely end on a great note. Or you have like the Breaking Bad, which another great ending. This one was a very expected ending, I think. I don't know. Maybe not from the start, but definitely how that last season was shaping up. Walt's end. I don't know. Yeah, I felt like it was really well done. Not a surprising ending, but a great ending. Then next on my list is probably The Dark Knight, which I don't think this one needs explaining anymore either. I don't know. It's just such a great way to wrap up The Dark Knight, which is a great movie. Definitely not overrated, by the way. I know there's kind of a sentiment that it's overrated. I don't think it is. That ending is amazing. I think it's just such a great way to encapsulate Batman himself, um, which some people say that the Joker was like the best part about the movie, and that Batman wasn't really needed, but I disagree. And I think this ending really proves it just shows such a great side of Batman, where he does what he has to do for the city of Gotham, and I think it's just such a great ending and a really well done for his character, and just a great way to wrap up a great movie. Another one is Cowboy Bebop. I won't spoil this one because it's also really great, and you should experience it for yourself. You should get your life together. But if you haven't watched it, it's a great ending, especially that last message. You're gonna carry that weight. I think it's one of those endings that I think encapsulates what the whole series was meant to be, and it just is an example of a writer knowing his themes very well. Now into some of the bad endings. To be honest, I thought this list was going to be longer, but I guess, like I said at the beginning of the video, most endings are just mediocre at best. But definitely going to put the Rise of Skywalker. I would have put the Last Jedi on here too, but I don't know if the ending for the Last Jedi is terrible. I mean, it kind of is, but I think the plot as a whole and that movie as a whole really was more terrible than the ending, in my opinion. The Rise of Skywalker is definitely dumb. It's J.J. Abrams at his worst, but J.J. Abrams is a complete hack, in my opinion. Kind of a useless writer, and I don't know why I don't know. He's been writing that Lost High for like so long. I don't understand. Like, how many shit movies do you have to make before it's like one TV show no longer vindicates this man? But yeah, I don't know. It's just so rushed. This whole trilogy was terrible. Then while I haven't watched the show, I have read the books, but Game of Thrones ending, I don't really need to explain that. I haven't seen it, but I've from what I've read online, it definitely just was a place on some of the worst endings. This is also kind of a weird one, but I don't really have any like emotional attachment to this movie. But the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes movie, the ending, this one's just dumb because it's like, I don't know, it's already been done before, and I don't know, the ending just kind of fell flat for me, and it also doesn't help that Mark Wahlberg's not really great in this movie, and the end scene with him in it is just kind of like, I don't know, his acting range is very bad in my opinion. Also, the end of Halloween Kills, which I hate this movie so much, but I don't know, just Michael Myers becoming immortal. I don't know, after the way that they set him up in this new trilogy, which the trilogy kind of sucked in my opinion. Yeah, I don't know, just not a great way to end it, I think. Now, to wrap this up, I'm going to do some endings that are controversial, but I actually really like. The first one is Mass Effect 3. Yes, and I do mean the original endings. I don't know. I get that people hate this, but I think a lot of people just wanted to wrap up a little, nicely. And I think they had like the collectors. I don't know what it was called, but they had like the collector's edition like special ending, and it was like too clean for me. It's like, oh, Shepard lives at the end, and it's just, I don't know. I think the whole like control option versus the synthesis really summed up a lot of the themes in Mass Effect 3 really well. I don't know. I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for this one, but I don't know. But I can totally understand because I remember when it first released, like the destroy ending, you had to play the multiplayer. So like that I can totally understand. But when I'm thinking just synthesis versus the control endings, I don't know. I think they were pretty good. Another one is House MD. I know it's not technically science fiction and fantasy, but yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Even though season 8 kind of wasn't great. I don't know. The end scene with House and Wilson riding off in the sunset, I thought that was a really good way to end it. And lastly, I'm going to say The Village. I know I kind of said I didn't like M. Night Shyamalan beginning of this video, but I thought this movie was really good. And I like the ending, the twist that it's just the humans. I don't know. I thought it was really, really well done. And, credit where credit is due. I really enjoyed that part. But that's going to wrap it up for me today, guys. So if you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe if you want to as well. And tell me what your favorite endings is in the comments below. Or is there anything I didn't mention about endings that you want to bring up in the comments? Feel free. But with that out of the way, I'll see you in the next one.